Hello, everyone. Welcome back to part two of LeanTossup Sports' sharpest college football podcast. This is BuckMetrics, joined as always by Robert Martin. Robert, are you ready to look ahead to week two?
Yeah. Honestly, I'm so excited, right? I mean, last week we were a lot of stuff we didn't know about. We're like, I think this could be a good play. This might not be a good play. A lot of stuff we didn't play because we just didn't know. Now we have a lot more information about this. Now we can make a lot better informed plays. And I'm like, okay, I really like. Before I was like, I kind of like this, kind of like this, kind of like this. Don't like this. Now I'm like, I really like this. I really like this. I can't wait for this game now to play this angle. That's where I'm at now. So I'm pretty excited for this week.
You left out overreaction, and that's always a great part of, of week
Yes.
two. Just to completely go on the other run to the other side of the boat and say, I liked this, and now I like that. So, I'm going to try to keep my plays to those that are in line with kind of what I liked before the season, which not going to leave me too many plays, I don't think, but we'll see. So looking ahead. So first of all, my metrics is kind of looking at after 1 week plus week zero. Just who are the leaders in some of my metrics so far. My quarterbacks. This is to qualify, you need at least 10 attempts per game against FBS opponents. Michael Pratt, he was awesome against a pretty good South Alabama defense. I'm very bullish in general on Sunbelt defenses, so I'm incredibly impressed by that. And they didn't have Ty J. Spears, so very impressed by that. Dylan Gabriel, big number. Arkansas State, horrible on defense. I think officially circling the drain, so good for him. Caleb Williams, 239 apex against two teams that were actually pretty good against the pass last season. I didn't explain here. What you have in parentheses is these teams' defensive apex last season. So both of those teams were a little bit above average last season. Michael Penix might have been the most impressive aside from Michael Pratt in that he did it against a Boise defense that I think will still be pretty good when all is said and done at the end of the season. Drew Aller, what a great first start for him. Now, West Virginia sucked against the pass last season, but my gosh, 213 as your first start as a freshman is awesome. Sam Hartman, we only count the Navy game since Tennessee State is FCS. Okay, I mean, good. We knew that he was good. Navy's defense, we know, is a train wreck and has been for a few years. Shedeur Sanders, I think that's been talked about to death. Awesome, great for him. Let's see it against Nebraska. Jalen Milroe, nice, good for him. I just need to be convinced against something more than a Conference USA team. Connor Wegman, this makes sense. Bad defense, new great offensive coordinator, really good first step. Nice to see him take a step forward that they thought he could, but I need to see more than just New Mexico. And really impressive here, coming at 10th, Jordan Travis for Florida State. 184 against an LSU team that was sneakily not great against the pass last season, but still, it's an SEC defense, an SEC West defense to be precise. So, what really strikes you as interesting here?
I'd actually say Tulane and Michael Pratt. That he looked really, really good. That's actually one of the games I rewatched today. That he looked really, really good in that game. Tulane looked really, really good in that game against a Southern Alabama team that we actually like. And again, the thing was they took down USC in, I believe it was the Cotton Bowl last year. And I was very impressed with them in that win. And I said, okay, well, they've lost Tajay Spears, maybe. And to be fair, if you watched that Cotton Bowl game, you may have been like, oh, maybe Tajay Spears was this entire team. But Michael Pratt came out there on Saturday and said, guess what? He's not. And this Tulane team might be for real. I'm just kind of I think they might be the team to get the access bowl bid, as we've talked about before. And they have a game this weekend, and they are underdogs against a team that I would say is not particularly scary. And we'll talk about that later. But yeah, that's one that sticks out to me as like, hey, that's a very that could be a very good game as well. Jan Miller with Alabama, that actually seems a little low to me. I thought, based on some of the highlight clips, he looked amazing. Now, again, it's all relative, right? And it is important to kind of counterbalance that. But yeah, that I I think they still need to prove Bama still needs to prove themselves against a better team. Connor Weigman, Texas, they looked really good against New Mexico, but again, it is New Mexico, right? That's kind of on this page. It's kind of one of the smallest deltas between what they got and what their
Yeah.
average was last year, right? So I think that although people are raving about Texas A&M right now, and they're actually ranked, I believe, I kind of think unjustly ranked to be fair, but they're raving about Texas A&M right now. Maybe that's a little misplaced. I mean, okay, yeah, they beat up a bad team, but it was a bad team, and I don't know if they're good yet. Just because they destroyed a bad team doesn't mean they're suddenly a good team now. Like I would have not ranked them yet, but that's just me.
Yeah, and while you were talking about Pratt, I just kind of thought about when we were doing the American preview with Josh at CFF guys, and I was concerned that Tulane lost a lot of their explosive receivers from last season, and he actually said Pratt's going to throw whoever he has open, and I don't know, against a really good defense. So far, he was right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, top Ryan. So these are the top receivers that again Ryan is receiving yards above noob. Basically, we take your number of receiving yards less a number of yards per reception for a noob, or basically if just a stiff went out there and caught passes, how many yards per reception would they get? And this is your delta over that. You'll see these numbers skew a little bit one way, but interesting. Oh, sorry, I got right off the bat, the Hawaii one's wrong. That gentleman, Mr. Ashlock, is that's in 2 games, and it wasn't against South Alabama. It was against Vandy and Stanford. We'll see. Those defenses kind of stunk last season. Taj Washington, he just kind of drew the long straw. It just seems that if you play receiver for USC, you can catch 2, you can catch 9. It just kind of depends on how much they're going to use you. Deion Burke's not familiar with him, but interesting that maybe he's the guy in the new Hudson Card offense there for Purdue. Xavier Legette, not a name I know. Let's keep an eye out for him. This next one is really interesting to me. Eric Brooks, not familiar with him, and this is why I'm interested in this. When we did the Mountain West preview, I was really sold on Fresno's defense, and they kind of made me look stupid in that regard, giving up so many points to Purdue. But they have a good quarterback that came in from Central Florida when he had a great game, Mikey Keem. And my biggest concern was, can they find a receiver? Because they lost basically anybody that was worth a crap that caught passes last season. And this is super promising. I know that it's the first game of Ryan Walters as a head coach, so maybe there were some transition issues there. But this is very, very promising. And in part 1, I talked about I feel more confident that Boise is dead money in the Mountain West champs pool. Man, this is really encouraging for Fresno State. One of the big question marks. There's a piece that seems like it might fit nicely in there. Anthony Simpson for UMass, 2 games kind of skewed that a little bit, but he's got the moon god on his side. Get well quickly, sir. We talked about J. Michael Sturdivant a little bit about UCLA. He was a big transfer coming in when Ship was on our pod. He liked that. He actually mentioned that as a big transfer in. Now, Coastal Carolina, their defense was just horrible last season. I mean, my gosh, 152 defensive apex. It's kind of like everybody that you're facing, you're turning into Caleb Williams. So take it with a grain of salt, but that's a really good start for them. Dylan Edwards is awesome for Colorado. Lincoln Victor, we spoke about the new Cam Ward led Ben Archibald offense at Washington State. Somebody to catch it. It was him against a good pass defense, which really even makes that Cam Ward performance even more exciting. My gosh. And I have I'm pretty certain that Brian Thomas Jr. did not play for LSU against LSU, so that's a mistake. My apologies. So we'll see about that. What do you think about anything on here strike your fancy?
Yeah, I'd say Purdue and Fresno State. I mean, the thing is, that game was like, I think it was Purdue minus 4.5. They did lose the game, but I came away from thinking that those teams are actually both not half bad. I thought Fresno was going to be bad this year after they lost Jake Hainer and basically a lot of other pieces. I'm like, okay, this could be rebuilding year, right? Especially when you're looking at a non P5, when you're looking at a G5 school, lose a quarterback, lose a couple other pieces. You're like, all right, that's it, rebuilding year, maybe even 2 rebuilding years. No, they're right back in it, taking down a Big Ten team. So that's very impressive to me. But additionally, on the flip side, man, Purdue with Hudson Card actually looked pretty good. Like, that's the
Yeah.
best we've seen Hudson Card look in a while, even better than at Texas at some point. So, like, wow, like, I think Purdue's against Virginia Tech, and for some reason, Virginia Tech is laying points. I have no idea why. That's one I'm looking at already, and I'm like, I'd take Hudson Card over, I think, I don't even know who.
Grant
Oh, yeah,
Wells. No,
Grant
no,
Wells.
no.
Yeah. No, not Grant Wells.
Is
No.
that? Yeah,
No,
no.
Brandon Armstrong's NC State's quarterback. I don't know who that is, but yeah, like I'm looking at that, I'm like, I kind of want to take Purdue there. I mean, Virginia Tech kind of kept Old Dominion hanging around pretty late into that game. Yeah, give me like that seems like a play already. Like I don't understand why they're like Purdue. Purdue looked pretty good to me actually. Like I thought Purdue was going to be in trouble too. They were actually Purdue and Fresno were kind of the same team, both replacing their quarterbacks, and yeah, now both look pretty good. So
It is Grant Wells who really loves to throw the ball to the other team. Um, let's keep it at that. Although he managed to not do so this week. My top GGABs. GGAB ground game above Boston College. So basically, this is saying if Boston College ran the ball the same number of times as this team, how many more yards did you get? So this is basically who has the top GGAB so far. You can see that it skews in favor of teams that have played twice. And I've got basically the opponents and then their defensive GGAB rank. Florida State, not surprising, they run the ball well, and Kent State literally lost everybody. I mean, everybody on defense, and not in like a Coach Prime kind of way, more in like a, oh my gosh, the hurricane has hit us kind of way. USC, not surprising, very good run game. I didn't know San Jose State was that good last season against the run, but that offense is just ridiculous. South Florida, this is interesting. The new coach, Alex Golish from Tennessee, this is a really promising start against a Western Kentucky team that I think is one of the top in the G5. Cal, maybe North Texas is not great against the run, but, really good start for their new offensive coordinator, Jake Spavital, which is an odd match for Josh Wilcox, but hey, it's worked so far, at least for one game. Number 5, Massachusetts, Moon God. What else can you say? Wisconsin, had their way with Buffalo. I think you made the point in part 1. They probably just ran out of clock if they wanted to beat the spread, but man, they ran the ball extremely well. Auburn put it to UMass. Enough said. Hugh Freeze, good job. Nice opening. Likewise, good start for Tennessee against a good UVA defense. TCU, for all their problems, they actually ran really well against Colorado, and they probably feel kind of dumb losing that game when you run that well. I think, for all the teams that ran once, I think they're the highest ranked to not win. Well, South Florida actually lost, but, different kind of opponent there. And then San Jose State, I think that's aided by basically just facing USC's horrible run defense. So what sticks out to you about this list?
yeah, I'd say the Tennessee one does a little bit. Tennessee with last year with Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton, they were basically a very strong passing team. Hendon Hooker put up insane numbers. I mean, he also ran a lot too, but he put up a lot of insane passing numbers. And Joe Milton did only pass for 2 passing touchdowns. Now, okay, that's like, only 2, but the spread was 2.5. So like he pretty much he underperformed the spread by a little bit there, and they just ran it in a lot. Now, okay, that's fine. But again, you have Florida coming up in 2 weeks. If Florida can figure things out, their defense against Utah was not horrible after that first drive, right? So that's interesting. Cal being on any sort of top list is kind of interesting to me. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
I guess the ACC's getting a steal there.
Yeah.
But Yeah, that one is fascinating to me. They absolutely destroyed North Texas. Now I thought maybe North Texas could be an upset. I didn't actually touch that one, but man, that was a good. They just destroyed North Texas. Is Cal's only getting 6.5 against Auburn? That's a potentially interesting game as well. And the other one that's fascinating to me is Central Florida. They are only laying 3.5 against Boise.
Mm-hmm.
That one is I love. Yeah, I don't know why that's so low. That should be UCF all day. I don't understand why it's so low. Um, Maybe some people are still, oh well, they lost to Washington, which is a good team, so maybe Boise, the market hasn't fallen out on Boise yet. But like, I'm looking at that and I'm like, I want Central Florida there all day. But
I'll say this. Central Florida. I think their scrimmages are tougher than what they got against Kent State. I just, that's kind of a name your number game.
mhm.
So we'll see about that. But very fair point. Market intelligence. So these are basically the lines that I'm seeing that basically I think are saying something and kind of worth noting. So Wisconsin at Washington State. We spoke about this in part one. You noted that this line is way down from last season when it was at Wisconsin. That was a 17.5 point game. I'm kind of wondering why this number went up from 4.5 to 6.5. My God, Washington State looks so good. Is this the market just not believing in that yet? What we saw versus Colorado State?
I, I don't know. That's the thing that's interesting to me, right? I saw that 4.5, and I was like, I thought the first play was maybe Wisconsin, but now it's 6.5, and now I'm like, if this gets to 7, I think the play is Washington State. But I don't know. I mean, people were somewhat unimpressed with Wisconsin's performance there against Buffalo.
Buffalo.
I don't know. I just something. I mean, I feel like one of these lines is bad. Like it's like this line is bad one way. I don't know if it's bad in favor of Wisconsin or bad in favor of Washington State. Like I feel like you're gonna take one side of this, and you're gonna either think you're a genius or an absolute idiot for taking that bet. And like I don't know which. Like I just don't know which one it is. I feel like it's Wisconsin because I think Wisconsin is a better team this year than last year, and I think Washington State, although they destroyed Colorado State, which doesn't necessarily mean Colorado State might be in trouble in the MAC in the Mountain West. I think Wisconsin might actually be for. I think people are like Wisconsin's for real. They'll actually finish the job against Washington State. I think that's the only thing I could think of. Um, I don't know. I'm really confused by this line as well. But I'm probably not touching this, not for a while at least.
Yeah, that's often where I land on some of these market intelligence. It's like, okay, note for later, and just don't touch it this week. Colorado giving 3 at home to Nebraska. Does that mean that Colorado Nebraska would be even on a neutral field?
Basically, yeah. I also this is interesting because this actually after Colorado took down TCU, this line moved to like Nebraska minus like 2.5. I grabbed it at Colorado plus 1.5. I combined it with. I tried to do a 6 point tease, but then it ended up being a 6.5 point tease. So I actually have Colorado plus 8. For some reason, FanDuel only lets you do 6.5 point teases. It's to do with probability and the vig, but whatever. It's not a big deal. 6.5 doesn't really matter that much. So I've got Colorado plus 8, and I teased. I teased Notre Dame down to .5 against NC State. So I'm very happy with that result. NC State also not looking particularly great. Um, but I feel like that's enough for me on this. I think if this were to get higher, I think like if this got out to because this was at 5, this was steaming towards 7. The fact that it's not at 7 means that there is resistance back on Nebraska, and I feel like now if it starts going back out again, I'm on Nebraska here because I think there's a couple of things into this, and this is where this comes from. Right, the books are lower on TCU this year. Their win total was 7.5. This is a team that went, and it's so weird, right? Because I normally say, oh, they won the Big 12, but they actually didn't win the Big 12 last year. They just made the college football playoff without winning the Big 12, right? So like they were a college football finalist. They were penciled in to regress this year, not just by the books, but by us as well. So okay, Colorado beat a TCU team. I think TCU actually outgained them too, if I'm not mistaken. And again, this is what we talked about, this narrative, right? Okay, they beat TCU, then all of a sudden they're going to be favorites against Nebraska. Well, guess what? They are now, right? This is, I think the books know this is an overreaction, and they're putting a line out there. It's a trap. They're like, go ahead, take Colorado. Make Colorado lay points. I think they know this is going to be like Nebraska, a field goal. Nebraska wins by a touchdown. Like, weirdly enough, last week, Nebraska's entire offense was Jeff Sims. He passed for obviously 100% of the passing yards, and then he had like half of the rushing yards, which is nuts. He had like an insane percentage of the rushing yards as well. I am scared by basically taking Jeff Sims and the points at 3.5 for 7. I'm happier, but not the most happy, but happier. Um, but no, it's a very. I'm not laying points with Colorado at this point yet, just because they beat a TCU team that I think is very suspect. So I'm staying away from this. If I get some value on Nebraska, I'll take it, but I'm not laying any points with Colorado.
As you went through that, the more and more I was thinking, I definitely don't want to be one to jump on any kind of bandwagon. I like to go on the other side because that's where you can get a lot of value. But everything that you kind of just, every data point that you said in terms of what happened last week just points to Colorado should be giving more. And maybe the takeaway is, you know what, Nebraska lost by 3 to Minnesota. And maybe the thing is, hey, Minnesota's pretty good, okay? Maybe they just didn't look awesome, but maybe Minnesota's defense, which has been really good for like the last 3 years now, maybe Nebraska's getting a lot of credit for that, and they're seeing a lot of relief against a bad Colorado defense, particularly compared to Minnesota. So maybe that's kind of like the takeaway here is Minnesota's defense is for real. Nebraska's getting a lot of credit for hanging with them because transitively this should be
Much
Colorado
higher.
by a lot more just on the face of it. Yeah, that's interesting. I appreciate you walking me through that. James Madison, we spoke about this in part one. We'll speak about it a little bit later. Giving 7 at at Virginia and the 44 total. So this tells me that basically, if I kind of put the total and the side together, um, pretty clear the market is not convinced on anything's been improved in the Virginia offense. I think that's takeaway number 1, 2, and 3 from this.
Yeah, I also think you're only getting 7 because this is a Power Five against this is a G5 against a Power Five, and they're like, we're not gonna put what the real number should be
Yeah.
here because if we do, then everybody's gonna bet Virginia. People are like, what's James Madison? I've never heard of James Madison. Okay, we'll
Yeah.
take James
And
Madison all day.
yeah, then we'll talk more about this one in a few minutes. Iowa giving 4 at Iowa State. Iowa State had a really bad season last season. I mean, Iowa's Iowa. What can you say? I think there's two things. Probably there's some rivalry game aspect in this. And, when we did the Big 12 preview, I said that I thought Iowa State would improve because either at that point, Sam Deckers would, he was the quarterback. And I said at some point before too long, Campbell's going to bench this guy because he stinks and he'll just get tired of it. And, he got swept away in that gambling scandal. So the backup, I think his name is JJ Kohler. This is just telling me that Deckers is not missed at all. And actually, what I thought was the avenue or the path for improvement for Iowa State is upon us. Because going off of last season, then you add in plus Cade McNamara for Iowa for whatever that's, whatever epic battle there is between his competence and the incompetence of Brian Ferentz. Iowa -4. Now, granted, it's at Iowa State. That says a lot about, I think, Iowa State more than Iowa. Fair?
Yeah, this line is fascinating. So spoiler alert very quickly in a couple of slides we're going to do a deep dive on Iowa. So I am going to focus mostly on the Iowa State side of this. Iowa State, yeah, okay, they had a huge gambling probe issue and they did beat an FCS team. That being said, they did actually get outgained by the FCS team in yardage, so that's concerning. Cause here's the thing: looking at Iowa at -4, my first thought was Iowa State all day because Iowa did not cover the spread. We're going to talk about that in a bit more in a second. But I'm like, that was horrible. We're going to go Iowa State here, but then they got outgained by an FCS team, and I'm like, that's not great. But they did win. I'm not sure if they covered the spread though. But The other thing is apparently Cade McNamara may or may not have been injured. He did leave the game relatively late. It was mostly over at that point, but he did leave the game late. Apparently something with his foot or something. I don't know. I'm not sure if he's or foot or leg or something. I'm not sure if he's been playing or not. So there's possibly some of that built into the line as well. I don't know, man. This is just a I I don't want to touch this. This is sick. This is
Yeah.
uh, like
No, yeah,
I feel
and this
yeah.
isn't like, hey, pick a team. It's just like, what can we learn? And I think it said Iowa State is not as bad, and you're kind of talking me into, boy, this is same old Iowa. What's interesting too? Iowa's defense obviously was great last season. I actually have Iowa State's defense not too far behind them. I had Iowa as a 10.8, and Iowa State as a 7.8. It's pretty close, and Iowa State was in kind of a rebuild too. So yeah, maybe I think the path is upon us. I don't know. I don't know if there's
30,
any time for like,
36 the
oh,
total, which is not
oof,
bad.
that's awesome.
Like this, I think this game last year was like 13-10. It was in a torrential downpour too. Iowa State did win that
Yeah,
game last year. I feel like you take Iowa State, you take the under, and then you take Iowa State parlayed with the under, and you just say this game ends in a field goal either way, and I'm not sure which team wins that scores that field goal, but it doesn't matter because I'm getting 4 points. I think
mm-hmm.
that's a fair thing to say, and you
Yeah,
just bet nothing else in this game. If they give you any sort of passing yardage prop, just bet under for it. And I don't know, just like Iowa State had a lot of unders last year. There's a lot of like really low totals games that they played against a lot of Big 12 teams. So I don't
yeah.
know, just I'm not. We'll talk about Iowa in a second, but I'm not on Iowa. This is not great. So
When you say not great, that's really concerning. Auburn given 6.5 at Cal. I think this is showing that the market really believes what Cal did in North Texas, because Auburn kind of did okay. It looks like Freeze's will in his way. They ran it up against whatever FCS team they played. Um, or no, they played UMass. Pardon me. Um, his defense is not half bad, and the fact that this is only 6.5. Now, granted, it's at Cal, but Cal's not the toughest place to play. I'll just put it that way as a Pac-12 fan who's seen a lot of games there. This is showing a lot of faith in Cal. That's how I interpret this.
this is this is interesting. This I would have expected this to be a lot higher. This could have been
Yeah.
like 13 and a half. This line is it's either going to be and it's so suspiciously low that a
Yep.
part of me thinks that you bet Cal here.
Yep.
Like I feel like this is going to be either Auburn wins this by 20 or Cal wins it outright. And like
Yeah.
it's one of those two. And I feel like it you're going to be like, well, of course that happened, right? It's like, of course Auburn destroyed them, or oh, that line was so short. Of course Cal won, right? Like it's literally, I suspect it's the Cal one, right? We've seen this a lot in college football last year. This reminds me a lot of, I think it was when USC played Oregon State, or when USC played Fresno State last year, when the line was like 6, and we're like, there's no way USC can't cover 14 and a half against thing, right? And sure enough, they didn't, right? So I think that's exactly what we're looking at with this, right? I think this is a trap, and I think you bet Cal here because this is also an SEC team, right? How much is this added to an SEC team, a well-known SEC team? And you're like, maybe this probably would be a field goal if this was if you strip away the Auburn name and just make this a team. This is probably 3.5, and like I think the play here is Cal, and I'll have to see if I play this or not. But like I'm tempted to play this as for Cal.
It's interesting. Yeah, I'm extremely data driven in my decisions, but same exact thought process. My thought was, okay, 13.5 seems like, yeah, maybe Cal can do a sneaky little thing, but the fact that it's, half that, it's the classic somebody knows something line. And I think, to your point, just a really small money line play on Cal might be the way to go here. I wouldn't even 6.5 wouldn't. I don't know. Not worth it to me. I'd much rather take money line and see what the money line is on that. Um, App State at USC. This interesting movement on here. It opened it at UNC given 15 and a half, and it went up a field goal. The total actually went down a field goal. This is telling me we got kind of two narratives here that I saw before the season. So I mentioned it because it lines up with both of them. When did the ACC preview, I liked I liked how the departure of Phil Longo would affect the UNC defense. And we saw that against South Carolina. Their defense was much better against South Carolina than basically all of last season. And App State lost their really good offensive coordinator to Auburn, I believe. And I expected them to struggle, and they struggled in the first half. So I'm thinking that just kind of the convergence of those two is showing, line shading towards Carolina, the total going down. Basically just a little more belief in the UNC defense as it relates to the App State offense.
Yeah, I'm very iffy on this one. I After seeing UNC's defense really shut down South Carolina, I think that's kind of what did it. App State was okay. I think they played an FCS team. I think they won,
Yeah.
and they looked pretty good. But again, it's that defense. Now I know, and their offense is App State's offense is a little worse, but I kind of think if you're playing something, you're playing 18 and a half, and you're just betting on a regression of a Mac Brown team doing something stupid or having a bad game in there. Because the thing was, to be fair about South Carolina, right? We didn't last year. They were not particularly good until at the very end when they took down um, Tennessee and Clemson,
Tennessee
ending
and Clemson,
ending two college football playoff runs in 2 weeks, and then but then after that, then I think I can't remember if they won the bowl or not. I think they
No,
played.
they lost to Notre Dame.
They lost Notre Dame in the bowl, right? And
Yeah,
then
they had
and
two
then
pick sixes. It wasn't even that close.
yeah, and this is the thing, right? I think we were lower on South Carolina's offense before. Then this happened. Then basically they had 2 amazing weeks and they lost the bowl. And then they struggle in this game against UNC, and now we're like, well, no, it's fine. They were actually really good. UNC's defense was the thing that shut them down. It's like, well, no, they also just did a bunch of dumb things too. Like, I still can't completely buy in on this UNC team. I don't like. I think the defense is going to cost Drake May the Heisman at some point. For that game, the original spread in that game was 2.5. I did what I thought was a really smart play was the second UNC scored, bet the 7.5, and that was a very smart play for the first part of the first half of that game mostly. But then UNC scored and then they scored again and then they just kind of blew it away. But I thought that was a very smart play. I don't know if there's anything you're playing in this game, it's App State, but I don't know if I could justify it. If there is a play, it's App State, but I don't know. I can't. I'm having a hard time justifying that.
Yeah, I don't think this is a play. I kind of looked at this as a possible play before on North Carolina, but the fact that it moved already against me so much, I'm passing on that. Lastly, and we talked about this one a little bit in part one, Charlotte at Maryland, the total of 51.5 is interesting to me. Now, I didn't put the spread. The spread is 24.5. So that implies that Maryland is going to score, doing the math in my head, 37, 38 points. And I think at any point last season, the team total for Maryland would have been probably about low 50s. So this goes back to what I mentioned, that huge turnaround. And it was only against South Carolina State, but I think Charlotte's defense is way better already than what we saw last year. That's what I take away from this one.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued in this one. That spread seems a bit too high, honestly. But I don't know. Let's see what Charlotte can do. We were kind of high on them. Let's see if they can kind of meet our expectations or not. But that's just an interesting one to kind of put away and see what the result is.
Yeah, I was skeptical. I just have they're a blank slate. I mean that new coach who's I don't know. He was a chief of staff to Harbaugh. He wasn't even a position coach, and who knows if he has the Harbaugh weirdness that goes with it. I don't know. And then he had a really interesting. I don't know if you remember that he had the really interesting press conference, and we talked about that in the American preview, where they only had 3 questions, and he got upset. He said, "Nobody cares about us. Message received." And they just, I don't know. I can see how he got along with Harbaugh very well. I'll just say that.
Maybe there could be an upset. I mean, like Maryland is not always the best. Sometimes they play down to their level. Maybe there could be an upset here. I'll look at it more.
Okay. All right, that takes us to deeper dives. Do you want to educate us on why Iowa is so awesome?
Yes. So before this season started, in our previews, I said Iowa would be. I question whether or not they'd be better, but I did say that they might be a team where we might want to play alt spreads because they're going to try to save Brian Ferentz's job. So they're going to probably try to lay on certain points against kind of lower quality teams. And one of those teams was going to be Utah State, their week one opponent. And this is what happened in this game. So this is why Iowa is not okay. A short presentation by Robert Martin. So the score of the game this weekend was Iowa 24, Iowa State 14, which isn't good because the spread in the game was Iowa minus 24, and they scored 24 points. So that's not good. And you look at yardage, it was Iowa 284 yards to Utah State's 329 yards. The offense was supposed to be better. Why is it not better? So let's go through drive by drive this Iowa game, and then we'll figure out why this didn't happen. So the first drive, they had a 54-yard, I believe it was a punt return. So that's good. That's good. Then first offensive Iowa play of the season, run, classic. That's how you do it. That's how you win football games. Second down, 36-yard touchdown pass. That's great. That's good. That's a positive change. That's good. That's exactly what you want for an offense. Second drive. So they passed on 3 out of the 4 first downs. That's good. That's another positive thing. Again, showing aggression on first down. Ends in another touchdown. So this is 14-0 now. That's great. This is what you should be doing against a G5 school. Then the third drive. This is when things start changing a little bit. So again, the passing on first down. See 2 for 2 on that. And then they were out 4th and 1 on the Utah State 29-yard one. And then they decided to go for it on 4th down. They channeled their inner Brandon Staley, and they went for it on 4th down. Rush for no gain. Oh no, we left points on the table, guys. We could have gotten 3 points is 10% of a game's allotment worth of the points that Brian Ferentz has to get. So this is kind of the turning point when things kind of started to change. So the fourth drive, on the 4th drive, they run on first down. Again, we stopped passing on first down. Now we're going back to running on first down, 3 and out. 5th drive, we go back to passing on first downs, 2 for 2 passing on first down, but it is a punt. So kind of went back to it, but again, ended pretty quickly. 6th drive. Now this is when this gets interesting, and this is kind of the illustrative example of why this philosophy is not working. So they went 1 for 2 passing on first down. So they had basically 2 first downs on the one for passing, and eventually they get down to 1st and goal on the Utah State 8. So first down, and this is with seconds left. This is about a minute or so left in the half. So this is basically the last meaningful offensive possession of the half. So 1st and goal from the Utah State 8. What do? Well, we're Iowa, so we're going to run, of course. Gain 5, classic. So, okay, but here's the thing. That's not actually bad. Now you're only 3 yards away from the end zone. Okay, so 2nd and goal. What do? Well, we're Iowa, so of course we're going to run again. Only gain 1 yard, though, so that's not bad. We're very close now. So now that brings up 3rd and goal. ESPN said the 3rd, but I guess it's probably between the 3rd and the 3 and the 2 and the 3 yard line. But whatever. Okay. So now, what are we going to do now? Well, oh no, it's 3rd down. We've got to get a new set of downs. So we're going to pass, of course. But that unfortunately falls incomplete. So now here's the thing: we're on an opponent's 3 yard line. Rushing is usually working to get us a couple of yards. Passing has also been working pretty well. And there's only seconds left in the game. So what are we going to do? Of course, we're going to kick a field goal because that's what we do as Iowa. We kick a field goal, right? And this is the thing, right? There is no reason why you should have kicked that field goal. That should have been going for it, going for the throat, getting up 21-0 at the half. Perfect. That would have been great. Set you up to score another couple touchdowns right off the half. Get 35. You get off the field. You're good. Everybody's happy. But no, we're going to make it 17-0. Again, people are going to say, well, no, they made it a 3-score game. Well, you're playing a Mountain West team. Of course, it should be a 3-score game, but it shouldn't be 2 touchdowns and a field goal. It should be 3 full touchdowns. Coming back after the half, here we go. 7th drive, 2 for 2, rush on first down. Here we go. So then the 8th drive, we're going to do 2 for 2 passing on first down. But then we go back to classic Iowa. So then we're 3 for 3, run on first down. That ends in a touchdown. It's a 24-6 lead. 10th drive, we run it. 11th drive, we run it. Both those ended punts. And then the 12th, we take a knee to end the game. So, in conclusion, the aggression was there for a little bit, And then they got stopped on 4th down, and then that burned them because they lost points, and then like we're never doing that again. So, offensive personnel. So, of the 18 passing completions to Iowa that Iowa had in that game, only 4 of them went to wide receivers. 77% of their passes were completed to tight ends.
Oh, my God.
For comparison, 4 of 49 USC Caleb Williams passes have gone to tight ends. That is an amazing stat.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that Iowa's not USC? That's pretty controversial. I don't know.
So
you might want to rethink that one, okay?
I've made a useful comparison chart for Iowa here. So here's Zachariah Branch, a wide receiver, highly touted wide receiver for USC. Here's some advantages of wide receivers. They are fast. They can get behind a deep back or safety. They're impossible to tackle in open space. And literally a completion could just be a TD, just because you hit him at the right point in the stride or whatever. That's the advantages of wide receivers. However, there's some advantages to tight ends. They can lift an entire keg of beer above their head. And they can turn a run from a 3-yard gain to a 4-yard gain. That's how we win football games.
That's 33%.
Yeah, that's a massive increase. This is how we win this. And again, USC might have to play Iowa next year, so watch out, Lincoln Riley. There's going to be like so many tight ends on the field, you have no idea. So, in conclusion, getting a QB does not fix a run-first system. It turns out that is not the solution. They're apparently barely even trying to save Brian Ferentz's job because in the last couple of series, they actually just stopped playing. They pulled the starters. So that's great. Apparently, they're just like, yeah, we're not even going to try because this is again one of your easiest games. Are you going to put 20? Or are you going to put 30 some odd points up against Iowa State? No, this is the closest thing you're going to get to playing a bad team. You could have crushed them and basically made it so you have to score less points in future weeks. Apparently, that was completely lost on them. And the worst part about this whole thing is the defense is actually regressing. They actually lost the yardage game to a Mountain West team, which is never a good sign. That means that if the defense is regressing, this could end really quickly. And yeah, last point, things can get bad. This could be pretty bad. This could be potentially like 6-6, 5-7. Again, the only thing keeping this Iowa team up has been this defense. If suddenly this defense isn't good, suddenly this Iowa team is in deep trouble. And yeah, that is the end of my presentation.
Okay. I've got a few reactions here. First of all, as a USC guy, I'm just agog and aghast that Zachariah Branch made it anywhere near that. So thank you for that. Secondly, for reference, Utah State, I had their defense ranked 102nd last season. So I don't think it's like they're going to make this up later against Minnesota. I'll just put it that way. Or Illinois' defense. I'm wondering if they actually maybe just scripted, or maybe, how do I put this? Maybe the scripting early in the game allowed for the relatively more aggressive / normal play calling. And once they got past the script, they just turtled back into their comfort food of, between the tackles and punt. I'm guessing maybe they didn't read the contract. Maybe they did read the contract and this is what they want. And finally, going back to channeling their inner Brandon Staley, the fact that they failed on the 4th down conversion, I think that also means that they channeled their inner Iowa. Food for thought on that.
Well, that is actually interesting, right? Because you make a good point about scripted drive, right? Because first of all, they get a 54-yard punt return to start the game. Then they get, then they basically get a 36-yard touchdown. They get a one-run, 36-yard touchdown pass. So they're barely through the script at that point. So they're just like, I guess we just start from the beginning of the script, right? And then you try that again, and then they got a touchdown on the second drive. And then they're like, okay, now we're off script. Run it now, so then we go back to start running it. And but you can very clearly see that line when they try to go for it on 4th down, and then they got snake bit, and they're like, yeah, maybe we should just take the points now. We should just take the points. It's better to take the points, right? And again, it's just like this system is bad. It is not good. And I expected them to try to save his son's job, and apparently they're just like, it's fine. You could have kept the starters on the field to get a couple extra points. Not even to cover the spread, but you underperformed by 1 point. That's another point you're going to have to make up in the other what, either 11 games, right? So like that was just very bizarre.
It might be a matter too of some kind of like I don't know if it's Game of Thrones, but some kind of palace intrigue thing where some of the courtesans are in Kirk's ear, and they actually want Bryant gone, but they're convincing him, hey, just it's going to work if you just stick with the same offense that you've always run. That's the way to get to 25 points a game. That's and maybe it's just like, yep, you know what, you're right. You're right. This is what we do, and it's always worked. And so, there's like three sneaky little guys just planting that seed, just saying, yeah, don't change anything. Get this jerk out of here, and finally we can.
Well, is that the thing, right? Because it's like, well, I can't really fire my son,
Yeah.
so. And you're like, well, here's this contract, and it'd be like, oh, he's like, yeah, your system always should work. You need the right people to execute. He's like, yeah, you're right. Like, yeah, you know what? Actually, I could see that. This is kind of the backdoor way of getting rid of him. Be like, but you didn't get to 25 points, but came so close. Oh well, the contract says you have to be fired now, so I have no control.
Yep. Yeah. All right. My deeper dive. It's not any more kind. I'll just say that. My deeper dive is on Jeff Hafley, the BC head coach. Just the absolute star performer in the home loss to Northern Illinois, on which we both cashed. Yay. A little bit of a background on Mr. Hafley. He was a college and NFL position coach through 2018. He was the defensive coordinator for one season at Ohio State. In 2019, they had a defensive rating in my metrics of plus 13, which was the best in FBS. That defense was awesome. This was the LSU season, and I actually had Ohio State ranked a little bit higher in total. That's how good that defense was. And on the strength of that, BC hired him as his head coach since 2020. Now, being a defensive guy, I always look for my proof of concept. So the season before he came on board, the last season under the great Steve Adazio, Boston College's defense was a -7. His first two seasons, he improved them to a -2.8 and then basically a 0. So there's been some improvement. Then last season they regress. Okay, that kind of thing happens. But here's the problem. The ACC is a pretty mediocre conference, and the average ACC defense during this whole time is a plus 0.7. So in 3 seasons, he hasn't even fielded an average defense in a crappy conference, and that's his calling card. And I looked at basically, okay, the last 3 games as a touchdown plus favorite, he's lost straight up. 2002, he lost the opener to Rutgers as an 8.5-point favorite. Not easy to do. Rutgers is not good, folks. Then he lost that game at Connecticut as a 7.5-point favorite. This is when Connecticut was just trying to fight through like all those injuries they suffered. I don't remember if your model had it, but I think our models both had this, and it was one of those. I can't see it, but I won't argue with the model. And Connecticut won straight up, obviously. Nice money line on that. And along the same lines, opener against Northern Illinois, 8.5-point favorite, lost in overtime. And going back to the top here, I think this is kind of informative here. The fact that he was a defensive coordinator for just one season, and before that, just a position coach, I think that he just doesn't get what it means to be a head coach. I mean, only one season. It's not like this is a guy that sat as a great defensive coordinator for 5 years and really sat in the seat next to the guy and said, okay, I understand what it takes to run an elite program. He's been a position coach all but 1 year before he was a head coach. So really bad hire by Boston College. And, I think you mentioned in part 1 that we had overlooked really, I don't know how much of a hot seat this guy's going to be on. So I'm giving you the definition of a term here, and I'm going to see if you can identify what it is. The definition is, this is kind of like Jeopardy, the time required for any specified property, for example, the concentration of a substance in a body, to decrease by half. Do you know what term that is?
Oh, Half-Life.
Half-life. That is our name for Jeff Hafley. It is Jeff Half-Life because the likelihood of him returning as a Boston College head coach, I think it decreases by half about every 2 weeks here. So I think if we go about 6 weeks in, he's got a 10% chance of returning. Does that seem fair to you for Mr. Half-Life about a 2-week half-life on his likelihood of returning?
Sounds about right. Actually, just a quick fact. You mentioned that Ohio State 2019 defense. I just looked up that defense right here. Chase Young, Jeff
Mm-hmm.
Okuda,
Shifukuda,
uh,
yep.
yep, bunch of NFL first round draft picks there. Um, so yeah, and again, this is the same thing, right? It's like guy comes in, has a ton of talent,
Yeah.
coaches them well, gets a job, but has no idea how to coach lesser talent, right? And I think that's the problem. Is like, okay, like that defense sent a bunch of people to the NFL, right? And now he's going to Boston College, where none of them have got to the NFL, right? So,
Yep.
and even then, their wide receiver last year, Zay Flowers, he got a lot of NFL hype, and he was not good for
Yep.
them. But apparently, he might actually be pretty good with the Baltimore Ravens, right? So this is again, he couldn't get that talent level out of him, right? But now the NFL, like, it is extremely rare that you like. Generally, wide receivers are seen as good. Like, usually, wide receivers will have like insane numbers coming out of college. The fact that the NFL was so willing to take a shot on some guy who didn't have those kind of numbers means that they thought this guy was good. But the fact that he didn't have those numbers at Boston College meant that they were not getting the full out of him, right? And I think that's a huge problem for Boston College.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Good point. I think if there's like an opposite, if you look at, okay, what's amazing about what Colorado did, literally a whole new team. That offense is completely new, guys from all over the place, OC from Kent State, all new offensive line, and they put up 45 in week one, which is unreal. And I think what he did is kind of the exact opposite. It's like, okay, you didn't screw it up so that bad. You didn't have to congeal anything. You basically just called a bunch of nice plays and moved on, and have since proved that basically you called a bunch of nice plays and that's about it. All right. Buck the Bookie. So this is the game that we're going to play this season. Basically how this works is this is for futures only. You and I each start with 1,000 points. You can, and you've talked about Texas a lot, so maybe we use Texas as an example here since you seem so keen to bet on Texas.
Rather
You can
against
play
Texas.
a future. Okay. You have to use either the DraftKings price. This is just to prove that it's my choice to go against the dopes at DraftKings. You can go against. You can say, hey, I want to go with. I can get Texas at DraftKings for X, and you can see if, or you don't have to say their price. You can just say, hey, I'm interested in Texas, and see what I would offer them. So I'll give you plus 220 on Texas to win the Big 12. So you
No,
can take my price,
no.
you can take the DraftKings price, or you can just move on. So the points that you bet come out of your account and into mine, just like, I'm a pretend bookie. If you use DraftKings, it just comes out of your account and that's it, just like you booked a bet with them. If you win DraftKings, it just goes back in. If you win and you book my bet, it comes out of my account.
Okay.
That makes sense?
So that's okay.
And
So
whoever's the most points between you and I wins, and the loser has to make a small contribution to the charity of the choice of the winner.
okay. So you would put Texas at plus 220 to win?
Yeah. I want your money. I got to win this thing.
Yeah.
I have to
I
entice
mean,
you.
my price, like, what number would you actually, like, I'm not taking that obviously,
I'm
but what, like 5 to 1, 6 to 1? Maybe I'd think about it at 6 or 7 to 1.
I can't tell you that. I'm Buck the Bookie. I'm trying to win this game. I'm giving you a
Okay.
great bargain. I'm giving you twice the market.
No, that's still not enough for me.
All right. And hey, you got all season,
All
and
right.
this is just futures. I'm not going to do games
Just
because
futures.
we know the
All
lines
right.
enough. Yeah.
What about, cause I'm on Bet365. Um, 1 second. Regular
Nope. It
season
has to be the
wins
DraftKings price.
has to
It's
be
got to be the
DraftKings.
DraftKings price.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me.
That's
I
who I
do
want to
have.
go against. That's my
Okay.
competition.
I don't know if DraftKings has.
They have everything.
Did they have win totals? Currently, are win totals? Oh, they do have win totals. Okay. Oh, they have more win totals. Okay. Here we go. Texas under 9.5 plus 130.
Under 9.5.
You gonna
You don't
beat
have
that
to.
price?
You don't have to quote me their price, because you're kind of helping me.
Okay.
Nah, I'm not going to beat that.
Okay.
You can take that. Do you want to
All right.
do how many
I got
points you want to do on
1,000.
that?
I got 1,000 points.
Yeah.
I'll put 50 points on that.
Okay.
And then what do they have on Ohio State? Ooh, 9-1. Ooh, that's kind of tempting. And
What is that to
LSU
win the?
national championship. LSU 35
Okay.
to 1. Huh. Let's see here.
And this goes on for the whole season. You don't have to do them all right
Yeah,
now.
not all right now. No, yeah.
You can do it at any point.
Oh
Yeah,
wow,
yeah,
they
yeah.
have all of the. Oh, they have all of the division. They have all the conferences. Some of the books don't even have all the conferences.
Yeah,
Okay.
they have division winners
Huh.
too. Yeah,
Wow.
they
Nice.
offer a
Okay.
lot, and they don't know how to manage it.
No, they do not. Um, I give me. I might regret this one, but give me another 50 points on Ohio State 9-1.
You want to take DraftKings? You don't
Yeah.
even ask my price. Okay.
Okay, fine. What's your price then? What's your price?
I'm gonna do the Price is Right thing. I'll say 9-10.
Ooh,
I'll give you an extra. I'll give you extra 10%.
interesting. Okay, I'll put $50 on yours then. 50 points. Points dollars, the same thing.
Ohio State national champions. Okay. All right. And we got plenty of time, so
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Cool. I'll add a graphic for next time just so we can keep track of this.
Okay.
Okay. Looking ahead. So, wow. Yeah, let's look ahead because our solo play sucked. Somehow we went 0-7 on the games where we didn't agree. Although on the games where we did agree, we went 3-1 with a plus 44% ROI. We got a little juice there because we had Florida State money line.
Mm-hmm.
Good for us. I kind of feel like I'm stuck with you for a while. Don't take that the wrong way, but you're stuck with me. 0 and
Yeah.
7 combined. Not really impressive. So these are the games we decided to get into a little bit. I've got the current line. Hopefully that's kind of current. Your model and then my brain's line. This first one is fascinating. I'd love for you to explain the guy who's a
Yeah.
Texas skeptic. Yeah. Bama getting
So
42.
yeah. So the thing is, for some of these games,
Mm-hmm.
there's some weird things with the model early. The model has a weird tendency of breaking sometimes, based on a couple because I'm only using player data from the one game.
Yeah.
So some things break, so that's okay. So kind of ignore that one. Any extreme outliers, just kind of ignore them. I'm all over Bama here. I don't know why that broke. I'm not sure if it's on the Texas side or the Bama side that the model broke. It broke on one side. I'm not sure, but probably the Bama side. I'm assuming. So something went weird with Bama. So just give me Bama here. I'm just going to ignore that one because it's still I'm still fine tuning the model with the new season's data. So that one's very weird to me. I'm not touching it.
Yeah, we basically at the end of part one, we got into a little bit about the case of this. And maybe I'll just kind of start with how we ended that. And that is, hey, our guy Sarkeesian got outcoached by Steve Adazio at Boston College. Maybe that's just enough of a data point here. I, the little background for that is USC wasn't able to run the ball against a much more talented Boston College team. I think they were like 16 or 17 point favorites. Boston College wins. I think I'm not a believer. I guess I'd say I'm a skeptic about the Bama quarterback room still, but I'm more of a skeptic about, Sark in this spot. Yeah, he came close last season, but that was, you know, I'm just not convinced. I think that was, kind of their high point, and maybe he gets them to high point again this season. I don't know. Maybe that's why they were so whatever against Rice. They were looking forward to this game. We're stacking conjecture upon conjecture here, and I will go with what I know, and that's basically I'll take Bama as well.
Mm-hmm. I will say that for some of these, for when the line was last week, I think I had like Bama minus 20, so something really weirdly broke in the model there. There
Yeah,
is some weird stuff where the model will like I think if I had, I think Jalen Milroe had like the problem actually might be the
He was in
quarterback stuff.
garbage
So
time so soon.
no, so what happens is if he had more passing attempts last season, it uses his last season stats rather than this season stats. So then
Yep.
basically, because he played against Arkansas, but he wasn't great against Arkansas, and I think he played in another game too. I can't remember if he played against Auburn. He was. I think he played sometime last year. So his stats last year, it's some weird stuff. It's sometimes the model has some weird breaks, especially early in the season. It'll clean up next in a week or two. But no, that shouldn't be plus 42. That should be probably closer what's in your brain to minus 20. So assume that's a combined model play from what the model said last week.
Okay, and pretend model, just to be clear, because
Mm-hmm.
it's this is my brain, not it's not both
Yes,
models.
pretend model. Yes.
Um, yeah, just one thought too. Bama played Middle Tennessee last season, and they like made light bend in my model because they had that weird. They blew up Miami, and then they lost by like 100 to James Madison, and that just kind of screwed up everything for
Mm-hmm.
weeks and weeks. I don't know if there's a little residue of that since Bama played
Maybe.
Middle Tennessee. All right, UCLA at San Diego State. You have this even surprisingly,
Yeah.
and I don't know if that's broken or maybe it's the Dante Moore thing, or maybe you probably have Ethan Garber still in there, and he
Yeah, I still have him
stunk.
starting. Yeah, that's
Okay,
the
that
thing. I still have
explains
Ethan
that.
Garbers. I have that. I also think my model is out on Coastal Carolina. So I think that's the other thing too. It's like okay, you beat them, but not particularly convincing. And yeah, my model at least one weekend goes with the quarterback who threw the most passes. That was Garbers last week. So that's why it's probably on him. So I I don't know if I'm but also I think also because San Diego State played the FCS team. Sometimes when it plays an FCS team, it screws up too. So I think that's probably a part of it too. I'm gonna try. I think I'm gonna this week. I'm gonna add something to the model that basically says if an FBS team plays an FCS team, just ignore that game. Don't do anything with that. I think that
Yeah,
might clean up this part as well. So I don't want to particularly play this because there was a 14 and a half. They didn't cover it against a Coastal Carolina team that they kind of dominated. So uh, I don't know. I don't mind playing it, but I'm not the biggest. If it's Dante Moore, then yeah, maybe they can cover it because he actually looked really good in that game. So
yeah, I'm definitely taking UCLA here. Yeah, Jesus, that opener for San Diego State. It's not even like they were. Well, I don't know. Maybe that was a sandwich game between Ohio and UCLA, but Jesus, I mean, that's just more Brady Hoke magic. I mean, I, man, Jesus. Now that I'm speaking about it more, they beat a pretty good Ohio team, but Curtis Rourke was out for most of that game, and they still struggled against.
hmm
It's like okay, you beat the Warriors without Seth Curry or Steph Curry, awesome.
hmm
That's kind of what they did there. And then they struggle with Idaho State, and I think probably nobody, they just people say, oh, they won. Well, it was close, and Idaho State really, really stunk. Like I said in part one, I mean, one win last season, they gave it 37 points a game in FCS. Um,
hmm
UCLA's defense is going to be a lot proved this season, so I really like UCLA here. All right, we're on different sides here. SMU at Oklahoma. I think you chose this one, and your model actually shows this as an SMU play, maybe.
yeah, it's interesting because a week ago it didn't. My model actually had like 18 and a half, and then running it again today now it's 13 and a half. But again, it's a bunch of like, oh, okay, because the thing is, I have to update it with the most recent running backs and wide receivers because there's a good chance that a lot of the running backs and wide receivers aren't even playing in FBS anymore. Some of them are in the NFL, some of them are on different teams. So I have to make the update. But then what happens is it's like so when you look at different passing situations, it's like, oh, okay, say say Dylan Gabriel threw like two passes behind the line of scrimmage and like both of them were incomplete, well then it's like, well, he's just never going to complete a pass to someone behind the line of scrimmage, right? Like it's that kind of issue that
Hmm.
plagues the model in week one and
Your
week
small
two,
sample
right?
size
So
stuff.
very small sample size for some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, say a guy like he caught all the passes. Basically, Dylan Gabriel threw once behind the line of scrimmage, and someone caught it for gain of no yards. Well, then you're now saying, okay, well, he's only going to complete it's all behind the line of scrimmage plays are going to be for one. And last year he did that a ton, right? So there's a lot of weird stuff in there. I'm kind of on. I'm really surprised though that SMU is this low, but I am on Oklahoma here. They looked terrifying against Arkansas State. Like there's like okay, Arkansas State is bad, but then there's also like we absolutely destroyed them, and it doesn't matter. Like okay, you beat a bad team, but like you still absolutely annihilated that bad team. And I'm still on Oklahoma for that. I think Oklahoma's another team I could be looking at to win the Big 12. I don't think Texas is going to win it, and I don't mind the like plus 200, plus 300 on that. Like Kansas and Oklahoma could win the Big 12.
Yeah, I actually had Oklahoma and Kansas State playing, but during our podcast, I don't remember if you did too, but I actually during the preview of the Big 12 with Big 12 Mafia Brandon, he talked us into both grabbing Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
I got him at plus 4,000.
Mm-hmm.
JMU at
Same.
UVA. We actually spoke about this in part one a little bit. I like that JMU has settled on a quarterback with whom I'm familiar, and I really, really like. The only way I think this doesn't cover is if there's some kind of miraculous, high point of the season, emotional comeback. This is their first home game since the horrible shooting at where they actually lost 3 players. I feel bad crapping on them too much, but man, this is a 2-score game at least. My brain had it at 13. Your model has it at 23.5. And as soon as I got your model, I grabbed that because that's the one that's evident right on the face of it. This is a play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got this too. And the thing is, again, like their offense looked very bad against. I think they got 2 field goals and a touchdown against Tennessee. The Tennessee's defense is good, but like not that good. So this team could be really bad on offense, and their defense didn't particularly stop Tennessee either. So again, it's hard for what's happening with this Virginia team, but at the same time, like that was a year ago. Like it's still fresh in their memories, but like if you can't, like, why is this team playing games then? If this is still like right, like I don't know.
Yeah, understood. It's kind of a hard argument to make. I'll just say that
Yeah.
elegantly. Um,
Yes.
all right, Stanford at USC. Gosh, I don't know. Your model is in love with Caleb Williams and everything about USC. I
Apparently.
have the line pretty close. I've got it as a 32 game, 56 points. Maybe your model just
Mhm.
like looks at the highlight reel.
So kind of. So the thing is, I think my model still has a lot of data from last season, and it's like, oh man, Hawaii's bad. And I think it's actually kind of unimpressed by Stanford's win against Hawaii because Hawaii actually kept it somewhat close. They didn't cover the spread, but they kept it somewhat close. It's like, oh man, you let Hawaii get close, but like we know that Hawaii like almost beat Vanderbilt, right? So I think the model is seriously downplaying Hawaii. I think Hawaii was actually actually not bad, and I think the Stanford team might actually surprise you. So I'm actually on Stanford here. I actually like the Stanford plus the points here. Um, I just think that
Really?
Stanford had a really, really good running attack against Hawaii. They could not stop them. And I mean, USC's defense is probably better than Hawaii's. But like, are they that much better than Hawaii's? I don't necessarily know. I think, and Stanford's quarterback was actually pretty good too. Like, I was really surprised by how good he was and how good that running attack was. And the thing is, it made Hawaii look bad. So that means that either Vanderbilt is horrible this year, or it means that Hawaii is actually not bad. And at that point, then Stanford should cover this easily. This could be an actually like not. This could be like a sneaky test for USC. The thing is, like USC destroyed Nevada, but at the same point in time, they didn't cover the spread against San Jose State, and San Jose State got obliterated by Oregon State. They scored, I think, 17 or something. Yeah, they
17
scored
or 13, yeah.
17 against Oregon State when they put up like 28 against USC. So that means Oregon State has a much better defense than USC. And just by transitive property, it means that San Jose State may not actually be that good. So the fact that San Jose State covered this 30-point spread against thing makes me think that I think Stanford could actually give USC a bit of a run for their money here.
It sounds like you're saying surprisingly competitive.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, very fair. Yeah, I'm not going to bet this one, but can't really disagree with you. So you're going against your own model, though. Interestingly enough,
I'm going against the model because I see I kind of see the short
The
side. I
you know
see
kind
where
of
it
yeah
has,
the
yeah, because it's like, okay, it's thinking that Hawaii is really bad and it may be better this year, right? Like again, the same thing as Colorado. Colorado's like I think in the model, Colorado's like a 30-point underdog to Nebraska. Like that's not happening, right? Like clearly they're better than that, but the
mhm.
model has like 11 games of Colorado being horrible and like one game of them being amazing. And like I bet you any money now it's going to say TCU is horrible too. It's like, oh, you lost to Colorado. It's like, well, it's a completely different Colorado team. So some fine tuning needs to be done in this model. Again, we couldn't get a
Yeah.
lot done for tonight because the Duke game happened last night. I kind of need to rush to get this stuff in here, and it seems that a couple things broke, specifically Alabama for some reason. I'm not sure what happened there, but a couple of things seem to have broken. So yeah,
It week one, it's gonna
yeah,
happen.
hmm
Um, Air Force at Sam Houston. I really like Air Force. I'm almost a little bit concerned about how short this line is, but I just man, Air Force's defense is solid, and solid is not what I think of about the Sam Houston offense. This is going to come down to, I guess, if I just kind of talk through this, how comfortable am I if I am backing Sam Houston that they can stay, that they can really slow down Air Force's triple option, which is by far the best in FBS. It's not like you're playing, crappy Navy or kind of lesser version Army. I mean, this is the real freaking deal here, and I'm just having a hard time thinking that Sam Houston can basically do what Mountain West teams struggle to do, who are more familiar with Air Force and really slow them down. So I have this over a 3-score game.
yeah. I again, Sam Houston State is a weird one in which there's something weird with the PFF data. It doesn't have it. There was a couple of conferences for the FCS that it didn't have team data for, and that's very very weird. Um, but we're going to I'm going to see if it's Sam Houston. Like, so basically, I'm going to have to add Sam Houston State and some of the other ones that made the jump from FCS to FBS into the model. And I think to do that, I assume we're going to have Sam Houston stuff. If not, then it's a problem on the PFF side. And I've actually already reached out to them. I'm probably going to reach out to them again tomorrow to see if they can fix this. But yeah, I hope to have lines for Sam Houston State very soon and some of the others.
Again, you
But
kind of
yeah,
inkling on this one, like,
I'm with you. I think Sam Houston State's defense was good against BYU, but BYU was kind of very suspect anyways. I think again, just ground and pound this defense because the thing is that defense was out there a lot against BYU. They were out there a lot because Sam Houston State gave BYU a ton of turnovers. They were out there a ton. They're going to be pretty tired, and now you're like, okay, now go play triple option team. Good luck, right?
yeah,
And so yeah, I'm on air. I'd be on Air Force here too.
okay. UCF at Boise. You've mentioned this a couple times. I'm not too far off in that line, but I think I'm still somehow clinging a little bit to the narrative, I guess, maybe of Boise's defense. Your model loves UCF here, and based on your comments, I think that you really love them. Aside from your model too.
Yeah, I just you made a really good point in the thing, and you've made a point about the Boise's offensive coordinator. I think what you said there is completely true. I think they put up a couple points and then they just got completely shut down by Washington. I think this could go really bad now. Okay, UCF destroyed a Kent State team that's horrible this year. Okay, but they could actually be like they were never horrible. They weren't great. Like I've always thought of UCF as like okay, they're not bad, but they're not great. Um, but at the same point in time, I think okay is better than whatever Boise is right now. So give me UCF here. I think this is way too. I think three and a half is too short.
Yeah, yeah, I can't disagree. It's just not enough margin for me, but
Mm-hmm.
somehow I talked you in a position that I'm not going to take myself, even though it's been like kind of one of my weekly sermons here. It seems like on Boise. All right, next Jacksonville State at Coastal Carolina. You know, Coastal. I'm just I have a hard time with it with a team with their trajectory coming off a really bad spot at the end of last season, giving 13.5 to anybody. Um, you know, I had a pretty wide divergence when I was coming up with my -4 here. And what's interesting is if if you're going to bet on Coastal Carolina, what kind of price would you demand?
Yeah, I think something under a touchdown for sure. I just the thing is again, so Jacksonville State did almost they did beat UTEP, but barely. But to be fair, that was their first FBS game. That was their first win in FBS team. So they had, you got a lot of kids who've been playing in FCS for years. Finally, they get to play an FBS team and they win against an FBS team. That's great. Good for them as like the first win as an FBS program. So I think that was a very emotional thing. Additionally, on the flip side, you have UTEP who actually just destroyed Incarnate Word team, one of the better FCS teams in last week. That's for 7. I think they crushed them by like 2 or 3 scores at least. So I think, and now Incarnate Word has lost a lot in the transfer portal. They've lost some quarterbacks. I think the last 2 quarterbacks they've lost to the FBS level. They lost some coaches and stuff. But at the same point in time, I just I think this Jackson State team might actually be good. And we've seen this Coastal Carolina team massively underperform the market last year, especially when they were, well, Grayson McCall now, he's still here. But at the same point in time, I think this doesn't look particularly good. So I think Jackson State can get another win here. I'm playing I'll play the 13.5 and the money line here.
Yeah, I'll look at it this way. I think Jacksonville State easily has a better defense, as Coastal's is really garbage and limited this year. They've actually been pretty solid against the whatever teams. And last season they were actually pretty good defense at FCS. Pretty comfortable saying that Rich Rodriguez is a much better head coach than Tim Beck as well. Going back to UTEP versus Incarnate Word, did you happen to see who Incarnate Word's quarterback is this season?
No. Oh no, it's Max Johnson or
Close. Zach
Zach
Calzada.
Calzada from
Yeah.
Texas A&M.
Texas
Yeah.
A&M and then Auburn.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so we're both on Jacksonville State here,
Mm-hmm.
getting in 13.5. Okay, duly noted. Last game, Texas State at UTSA. My goodness. I think, before the season, this line would have been probably what your model has it as at about 20.5, maybe a little bit more. I've got this about 8.5. I'm just wondering, and unless Texas State absolutely just, poops their own pants here, I'm going to do a little bit more on Texas State next week. Really, really interesting. A lot of those pieces, I talked about it in the preview of the Sun Belt, but man, other little pieces that have surfaced since make this a really interesting team. I did grab them over 5 this season. There's been a lot of money on them. They opened at 4, so there's been big movement on them. A lot of belief in them. On the other side, UTSA, when we talked about in the American preview, they lost and had no offense against Houston, and this is on the heels of that 10-point game effort against Troy in the bowl. And this is all since they promoted the special teams coach or tight end coach, I can't remember which, to offensive coordinator. And I think that kind of is what this team is running up against here. From a momentum kind of standpoint, I love Texas State here again. Please tell me that your model is unfairly unkind to Texas State and I can back my Bobcats.
Oh no, 100%. This is again weeks of last year's data in there. It's not catching up so quickly yet. So 100% Texas State. I love Texas State here. The thing is, my model doesn't even hate Baylor. My model is kind of like it's not. It thinks Baylor is actually will be competitive this week against Utah. So I think the model is slow to react to Texas State's beatdown of Baylor. I think Texas State is legit. I'm on Texas. I'd be on Texas State here.
Okay. So to summarize, we are both on Air Force, Alabama, James Madison, Jacksonville State, and Texas State, getting a couple of big numbers there on those last 2. You solo have Stanford getting 30 and UCF. I've got UCLA on my own, which means that you and I separately go 0-3, and combined we'll probably go like 3-2 or 4-1.
Yeah.
Lastly, we started in our previews to go over in each conference. Give me an upset call. So you didn't take a victory lap for your awesome call of
I,
Colorado over TCU.
I know I have
I
not
think I
done
tried
that
to
yet. Yeah,
embarrass you and poo-poo that.
yeah.
My
Well, no, I
apologies
mean,
to
I'm
you.
still
Very
no,
well
no, no.
done.
I'm still. I mean, the thing is, again, and even I literally said that in. If you go back to the preview, I literally said that Colorado will upset TCU, and then we will immediately start betting against. I even said like we're going to start getting immediate value in Colorado. We're immediately going to because I said it would be the greatest. If they were to do it, it would be like the greatest. Like you have to think about this in terms of like the storyline, because the storyline would be like, oh, they upset them, they're really good, but actually, it turns out TCU isn't actually that good, and Colorado's not that good in comparison. So, no, like, and again, even then, I said Colorado's going to beat TCU, and then we're just going to spend the rest of the season fading Colorado, and yeah, we're already doing that. I've both the prophecy has come true already. So yeah, and I guess Hawaii over Stanford. I feel sad about that. I feel very sad. But
You
we'll.
got you got great closing line value on that though.
I did get great closing line value. Again, that I'm actually 2 for 2 on the upsets on closing line value. Um, kind of feel like LSU's. I'm gonna get closing. I may or may not get closing line value on that one. We'll have to see. I actually have that already as a 7. Oh god, I'm looking down. FAU for Tulane. Ooh, ooh, that's maybe I should have randomly picked Tulane there. Ooh, that might age really poorly. We'll have to see.
Yeah, this week actually, my first one, Temple over Rutgers.
Ah,
Temple's getting 9. I didn't have the balls to back them. I've got enough on them on the season win totals, but
Temple
we'll
did beat
see. I
Akron
don't know. That
last
was
week.
interesting. Temple. Yeah, it was pretty close, which I'm kind of taking as a good sign because I feel so strongly that both teams will be better than expected. So better that than like just Temple beating them by 50. I think Akron's going to be. I mean, obviously, I think Akron's going to be good. So, all right. Well, that's it for part 2 of week 2. Thank you, everyone. We will see you in about 7 days, and good luck this